The one you talked about that really I think is so helpful is not feeling the need to defend yourself. I can't remember which point you talked about that, but that took me a long time to realize. Someone calls me a racist or misogynist or whatever.
Oh yeah, shift the conversation?
Yeah,
Yes.
shift the conversation.
That took me too long to learn because it's like they don't care.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how many examples I could give of me why I don't hate women. They don't care.
Yeah.
So there's just no point in defending yourself. And anyway, that was so freeing.
Hi, my name's Jerry Doris. This is Tanner Cartwright, and this is Snake on the Table. Today we apparently have a guest with us here.
I'm not the snake.
You are the snake on the table, brother. Yeah. No, we just had our war room here in Shelbyville, Kentucky.
Yep.
And John was one of our guest speakers. Do you want to comment on A.D. Robles at all? I mean, he skipped out on us, man. He's gone.
He's a very reasonable Latino, but yeah, he kind of came in and left. And you know, the funny thing about AD, now I'm going to say this to you, AD, you never even said bye to me. You just kind of disappeared. And
God.
Yeah, I don't understand if I offended him. I don't know.
I'm hurt. That's how I feel about it.
He didn't even hang out with us around the fire last night. He was out.
Yeah.
He's gone.
Whatever. Well, we've got a snake for today, brother. And our snake is, are Christians allowed to speak like Jesus?
I hope so. But doesn't this get into the whole question of the communicable and the incommunicable attributes of God, right? And some things we can't do because we're not divine, and other things we can do in following his example. So I don't know, for example, what the Pharisees are thinking like Jesus did. He had that advantage, but I can make deductions and assumptions about what people might be thinking, or maybe I can believe what they say and I can calculate based upon that. Yeah. So that would be the difference in my mind.
Okay.
I think the question comes from the fact that in our day we seem to have this standard for you can't talk this way, you can't answer your opponents this way. You have it, and it doesn't seem to actually line up with how Christ answered his opponents or how he talked.
It's all flattened.
Yeah.
It's gentle and lowly, and you cannot go beyond that. You can't be aggressive and confrontational. You can't be insulting. Jesus was, I think, insulting.
Have you not
read?
Yeah.
What would an insulting thing to say to somebody who's
memorized the Old Testament?
Have you not read? But that's Jesus's rhetoric. All right, brother, you got a new book that you just that's coming out, and you had
it's out.
Yeah, it's out, and you had used a chapter on that to teach us this morning on the rhetoric.
It's one of the appendices, yeah. Or how do you say that? Appendix? I don't know. It was one of those
appendices.
Appendices.
Yeah.
All right.
That's how I would say it.
Well,
unless you're homeschool, appendices.
The appendix you take out of the book.
Well, if you got multiple ones, it's plural.
I lost my appendix, when I was like 5. But
really?
Yeah, I did.
So you put it in the book.
Tell us about that. That's more interesting than maybe what we're going to talk about.
I still remember it. I was in the hospital and it's terrible. Kid, but
man.
No, the appendix, whatever it is. Was from the book, and it was on the political rhetoric of Jesus. And so I tried to just go through the Gospels and think through how did Jesus handle his opponents, and it is specific to enemies. So Jesus obviously treated those who were humble differently than he treated ththose who were prideful, and especially those who were misleading the sheep of Israel who he came to seek and save. So So my point was just that Christians should follow that example.
Yeah, no, I obviously agree with that. So he has two voices: voice that he's speaking to the humble, voice that he's speaking to the proud, and even then, he's still provocative. Like when he's speaking to Nicodemus, we just spent 7 sermons going through John 3, and as he's speaking to Nicodemus, he's provocative. He's challenging him. He's putting him on the edge, and you know what I mean?
He's pushing him.
He's
like, how is it possible that you don't know these things?
How do you not know this?
You're a teacher of Israel. How do you not know this?
Yeah. Which would be an insulting thing to somebody.
He is more gentle, I think, with Nicodemus, though, than the Pharisees who really do oppose him. Nicodemus is asking questions.
Yeah.
He obviously takes more time with Nicodemus.
Yes.
Yeah.
But with the Pharisees, when they challenge him directly, especially when they're seeking to kill him, we talked about John 7 this morning, he just spells it out. You're seeking to kill me. And then, of course, the woes to the scribes and Pharisees are extremely harsh.
Yeah. So the question is, are we allowed to speak like that? Are we allowed to emulate? You said something I thought, just the way you set us up is how, should we look in church history of how Christians should speak? Should we look at this character from, this period of time or this period of time? Who should be our model for how we as Christians speak?
Yeah. Well, Jesus said to be wise as serpents and innocent as doves. And that really was my premise, is what does it mean to be wise as a serpent? And oftentimes I think people use elements of the Sermon on the Mount to override the example of Jesus. So because he said to try to make sure that you turn the other cheek. And
the meek will inherit the earth.
Yeah, and it'd be nice to your, well, it doesn't say be nice, but he says to, I almost committed a sin against the Bodhi Bacham rule there. No, but he says to, with your enemies, to love them, essentially, which is kind of revolutionary. And this is what you get from a lot of Christian teachers, is that they leave it there. That's it. And then you're sort of, I guess, as a Christian, supposed to make sense of that. What does that look like? So I treat my wife with love. I treat my kids with love. I treat my friends with love. So I need to do that, extend that to my enemies. But Jesus clearly, with his own enemies, does treat them differently at times. And I can't say that it's unloving, because Jesus is perfect and he's not going to violate his teaching, right?
Right.
So maybe the next question, I don't know, you haven't asked it, but is like, how is it loving for Jesus to scream at the Pharisees the way that he did? And I think he is loving, but he is meeting a threat. He is loving those who the Pharisees are misleading. He's identifying a threat to them.
Yeah. I think our tendency is to make, as you said, make Jesus one-dimensional.
Yeah.
We see him as only this. He doesn't have that, this quality. But if he loves his enemies, and yet he calls his enemies literally hypocrites and rebukes them. Snakes, calls them out, doesn't answer their questions, those kind of things. I think in our culture, especially in Christian culture, we would say we're not being loving. If we were to evaluate if I did all those same things and I did it, you would say you're not being loving.
Yeah.
And yet Jesus is the perfect example. And this has to be loving.
Yeah, so not only do we have a one-dimensional view of Christ, but we have a one-dimensional view of love.
Yeah.
And so the scriptures say that if you love your son, you discipline him.
Right.
You do things that actually hurt him.
Yeah.
And so that cause pain. And so it's oftentimes loving to rebuke our enemies harshly. It's often loving to expose them to the truth in a way that they can repent, in a way that they can turn away from it. So.
Yeah, their hard hearts need something that kind of jolts them if they're going to repent.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Well, so I think I've got it in my notes here. These are my notes. I don't know if they're accurate from what you were saying, but here it is. These are the 7 rhetorical principles of Jesus that you wrote out. And I was just looking at, I think there's more. I think you got a full book here. You need to write this
100%.
book. You need to write this book.
Yeah, I hope I can do that. I just came out with one, so I'm kind of going to bask in that for a little bit. But yeah, once the writing book comes back.
Don't waste the win, man.
Don't waste the win.
I'm a little exhausted right now.
You can just do it. Just write another book.
Yeah, I'll just
What's
do
the
that.
big deal, John?
It's a lot. I mean, have you guys written books at all, or?
I have.
I mean, you have. Okay. Yeah. What have you written? I'm just curious.
I've got a Bible study book thing that I've done.
Okay.
It's a hermeneutics book.
Oh, okay. That sounds kind of.
It's called the GAT study. That's a book that I've done.
The GAT study.
Yeah, gather around the text and just use the inductive method. So we used it at the beginning of Ref Church because the first one and the only one. We didn't do any more after that. But it's basically, it goes through the gospel. Okay. So it has 7 or 8 texts that you use. And as you go through that study, you're going through the tenets of the gospel.
I love to read
I'll give you a copy.
But I was going to say, though, if you write a book, it's a lot of work.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
No, we're messing with you.
Yeah, so you've got a couple in here. So don't take...
Yeah, and I can't remember all of them, so thank you.
They're right there. Don't take questions from your enemy at face value.
That was huge.
That's huge, yeah.
Yeah. Because I think we've got a tendency to think that we have to debate with our enemies on their terms, and we don't.
I find myself wanting to get sucked into the comment section so much.
Me too.
That's where I think that's where most of my Well, I mean, we do open air preaching, and we're out in the community, and we, I just engaged with some people, at a pro-life rally that were antagonistic towards me. Yeah, I mean, we get it, but mainly it's online.
Yeah.
And so just not responding is like,
Yes.
I guess that's one of these other ones that you have in here. Where is it? Choose the right setting.
Yeah.
It's generally not the right setting to argue with a woman in the comment sections.
Yeah, I haven't really done that. I don't feel like I argue with many women. 'Cause I don't know if they're not as an X as much. It's usually guys, I think, or with an N on it.
Well, AD was talking about this. He doesn't follow women in general, and we have a rule.
We have a similar policy.
We don't argue with women online. We try not to.
I can understand that.
It's a no-win situation.
You have that rule.
Yeah.
I try not to, but you're forcing your rule on me.
Well, there's women and there's ladies, right? I mean, sometimes when someone's not being very ladylike and they're being very antagonistic, maybe you do have to say something.
So I've been sucked in, and I think I'm in the middle of that right now. I've got somebody who has been asking me some questions about this bill, HB 523, and I'm thinking that she's genuinely wanting to understand it. And then I saw some comments she's making in other locations. I'm like, she's trying to draw me into something here.
Yeah.
So anyways, that's a different principle here, but what's some examples?
Yeah, we could, principle 8, never argue with women. It's just an argument from silence.
So no, I'm pretty sure Jesus did he argue?
He rebuked the woman at the well, right?
Yeah.
And he also
He
said
rebuked
to the
Martha.
Syrophoenician woman, but these were
So
rebukes.
rebuke women.
Rebuke women.
That's the principle of
Goodness.
Jesus'
Put that on a
rhetoric. Rebuke. Bro,
Put that on a cup.
we need to put that on a cup.
Yeah, he rebuked Martha. Come to think of it, this happened quite a bit.
He rebukes women often. Yeah.
The one you talked about that really I think is so helpful is not feeling the need to defend yourself. I can't remember which point you talked about that, but that took me a long time to realize. Someone calls me a racist or misogynist or whatever.
Oh, yeah. Shift the conversation?
Yeah,
Yes.
shift the conversation.
That took me too long to learn because it's like they don't care.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how many examples I could give of me why I don't hate women. They don't care.
Yeah.
So there's just no point in defending yourself. And anyway, that was so freeing when I learned that.
Huxley.
I still haven't learned that.
Who wrote 1984 again? George Orwell, right?
Orwell,
and he has that essay on a lot of essays actually on rhetoric and stuff. But I remember one of the ones I read years ago. He talks about these loaded terms that don't actually mean what they like. So one of ours today obviously is racist. Like it doesn't actually mean anything.
Anti-Semitism, yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't have any meaning except like you are the devil. Like literally that is the meaning of the term. It actually doesn't describe anything in reality.
Yes.
So using the term is against someone. Like I don't think he gives like principles for strategy. He's more just pointing out that like it's vacuous.
Yeah.
Well, Nazi has become that.
Yeah. What does it even mean?
What does it mean? So there's a lot of this happening online. People are being accused of this and that, and just not engaging in that discussion has really, I think it angers those that are against you because they want to get into this. Why'd you do this? Why'd you do this? That kind of stuff. I don't know. One of the things we did want to talk to you, and there's a bit of a shift here. We want to talk about multinational, that little concept.
We're going to get into that right
I don't know
now.
if we
His
should.
eyes just got big. I don't know what's going on.
I don't know. Man. We talked about
Multinational what? Like
well, just the whole. Is it? I guess.
What is a nation?
You know what's happened?
Yes.
Yeah. What is a nation?
What is a
What
nation?
has happened is.
Okay.
This.
We can talk about that.
Well, this conversation happened here a couple weeks ago, and we're kind of past the moment.
Yeah.
The whole ordered loves.
Sure.
That whole issue.
We're not past the moment, by the way, but yeah.
We're still in the middle of it.
Yeah.
Anyways.
I'll do my best JD Vance for you.
If this is going to be a short podcast, I don't know if we need to.
Wait, it's not get into that one?
Yeah.
Okay.
I could probably do it quick, but it's going to
well,
raise
let's go.
questions.
Rock and roll.
Yeah, because I talk about it in the book that you apparently edited very well, but didn't read. I don't understand how you do that. But
it's a gift, actually.
I guess it is a gift.
You think he edited
I
well.
didn't edit your book. I laid it out. There's a difference.
Okay. Well, it looks nice, but I have a few chapters on that, and so I go through. There's one chapter on the proposition nation, and I was very unsatisfied. This is actually partially what led to the book. Like I just same thing with the books on social justice. I didn't see other people writing about this, especially in the Christian world. And the proposition nation has been a huge problem. And just for those who don't know, that's this idea that the nation is this abstract idea of equality, or sometimes you could say freedom, and you can plant it in the Middle East and they can become Americans, and you can bring people over who have no affinity with us. They speak a different language, but they can be Americans because they have a belief in equality. And that's what America is. It's these high ideals. And the founders set it in motion in the Declaration of Independence, but then they didn't live up to it. And so you have the 1619 myth, basically, mythos, saying that we've never actually lived up to these promises of equality. So have we ever really been the America we're supposed to be? And then you have the 1776 Commission saying, actually, we did live up to them in the Civil Rights Movement. But both of them are saying the same thing. They're saying America just is this equality principle. It's not a people, it's not a place, it's this novel revolutionary idea. And so I did a chapter on Harry Jaffa, who was an influential figure on the right, who kind of like introduced this to the right, because conservatives never thought this way up until post-World War II. And then I do a chapter on biblically what is a nation. And I do come to the conclusion that, which I know this is the spicy take and probably where this is going, but like, is there a lineage or an ancestry component? And yes, you can't read the Bible without that. From the beginning, it's an extension of the family. There is ancestry, that is important, but there's also assimilation. And so what do you do with these things? Well, you have to admit that there's some room for some assimilation, but there's a scale. If you do what the Samaritans did and you intermarry so much and adopt their ways, you lose the nation. And you don't have one
You
anymore.
become something different.
You become something different. And that's what we've been dealing with, is these high levels of immigration that have challenged. So is that a good nutshell of...
Yeah, it sounds like I don't need to read your book because you just told me all of that, and that's helpful.
Oh, great. No, get the book, please. No, there's more. But wait.
So basically what this has become is his book that's coming out. Because he's got this chapter about rhetoric. Now he's got a chapter about nation. It's very eclectic in terms of all the different topics and stuff like that. But
yeah, I kind of wrote them over time with different topics that would come up. Some of them I got frustrated about because I wrote about it anticipating it would come up, and then it came up and I didn't have it out. But there's a lot of stuff in there about leadership and questions like, why are our leaders all corrupt post 2020? Yeah. Everyone's awoken to that, and they want to know. We're all woke now, and so I answer that question. And what is a nation? And can you have Christian nations? There's just a lot of things in there that are topics that have been, I guess, online in discourse recently. Yeah.
I've got a guitar. I was going to have you play for us as well. I'm just kidding.
My gosh. I mean.
All right, let's get back to this topic of rhetorical principles of Jesus.
So we just took like a detour into what is a nation.
This is totally what happens.
That's why my eyes got big.
People all call me a racist, and now we're just going back to the rhetoric of Jesus.
How do you feel about Paul Washer?
I mean, I like Paul Washer. I don't hate him. I used him as a drug back in the day to make myself feel bad more.
Shooting up Paul Washer.
I was snorting some Paul Washer when I felt bad, and I felt like I needed to feel even more bad.
Sure.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Well,
so he would scream at me.
I feel like we do get in trouble with how we speak online, how people are perceived. We've noticed a distancing. There's a distancing from us as a church, and you've seen the dividing. You were talking about even people that have followed you 2 years ago, they don't follow you. There's something they found out or whatever. Yeah. There's this polarizing effect.
I'm like, I've been saying the same thing, I think. But
that's kind of how I feel. I don't feel like I've really changed much. I mean, maybe it's kind of like a baby. You see the baby and you see it every day, and you don't see the growth and the change. And somebody comes in, 2 months later, and they go, "Whoa, look at the difference." Maybe that's what's happening.
Maybe.
But I don't feel like we've changed. I mean, we've still been aggressive towards the culture, trying to engage and change and do certain. The topics have changed. Different things have been said. But
well, the woke movement brought this all up. I mean, So they're bringing up stuff like race is a social construct, and that this sparks a question in people's mind, right? Because they're like, well, it's not that. But then the next question is, well, so what is it then? And these are questions that people are trying to work out in real time. What is a nation? What is a race? Does it even matter? Gender? I mean, all these things that are really creation order things. People feel like we went off track somewhere. So where was that? And how did we go off track? And it's obvious, I think, why these topics were brought up.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and that's what, to your point. All of these things, my takes that would be considered controversial, and I look back, I've always believed it. I just am more and more able to articulate it and clearly talk about it, and it just, more willing to talk about it, maybe.
Yeah. So I've been struggling with this, what you talked about, not accepting the terms or not answering the questions the way the enemy phrases those. I have fallen into that trap often. The whole, racism or misogynist. I love women. Look at the scriptures of women.
Yeah.
All this kind of stuff.
Yeah, me too.
Even our our Constitution when we wrote it. So we landed on the position that we don't believe that that the scriptures teach that they're women deacons.
Okay.
That's kind of where
Gotcha.
where we're at. But at the same time, we recognize there's a lot of women in the church that serve the body, and they do deacon the church, in that regard.
So small d, the acronym.
Yeah, I guess. So, but I wrote this glowing statement for women just to talk about their necessity, the essentiality. And as I reflect on that, as you were talking, I was thinking about that. I'm like, did we write that to prove that we love women? Did we write that?
You meant to say, did I write that?
Shut your mouth. You're an elder, and
I criticized you when you wrote it. So.
Hey, once you put your,
you're right.
Once you said
you're
yes,
right.
you got to own that decision, bro.
You're right.
So that's us.
I mean,
It was us.
I saw a lot of kids in the church. So the men in your church, they definitely love women on a certain level. I'm saying they you can cut that if you want.
No, we don't edit this. That's our problem.
I don't know what you're talking about. I've only got 7.
You got 7 of them. I don't, some kind of love's going on there. I mean, your wife seems pretty happy too. You guys have a good family. I mean, it seems like everyone's pretty happy at the church. So
A lot of smiling women.
I'm gonna go back to this.
yeah, I saw smiling women.
I think Jesus's rhetoric is masculine, obviously. And I think we can look to that and the way we speak to one another to challenge one another or to bring up topics or even to call people out and use names. That's a masculine thing to do.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's an effeminate thing to avoid all of that, to always have a nice demeanor and not speak that way. So I think it all blends together as you talk about, all the women that we have and all this, the structure that we have. Somebody asked me this question last night. Says, how do you get a masculine church? Well, I think you got to speak like Jesus. You have to be like Jesus.
One of the things you see Christ doing is that he's rebuking those that are following him constantly. He's not worried about losing the relationship. He's worried about what's true. And so we do it in a wise way, obviously, but we don't be unnecessarily antagonistic, but we do not compromise what's true in order to maintain people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think
That's
what you were
100%.
saying about the statement, I don't know if, you could write a statement about what the Bible says and about women, but I think the motivation is what you're questioning. Why did I do
Why
this?
did I feel compelled to have to do that?
Everything you said was true.
It's all
obviously.
true. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
And maybe that is needed. Maybe there's women who don't, I don't know, maybe they do feel like they're being sidelined in ways that aren't biblical, and you need to explain to them this is our position.
We're definitely not going to go back and change our Constitution.
No.
Because, I think we are called to honor those that are honorable.
100%.
We're called to.
And it was all true.
It's all true. Without them, the basic the statement is that without their love and their care, we cease to do the one another's, to love one another's. They're the ones that make meals and they're in tune with what's happening in the church.
Can you imagine a church of all men?
No.
Well, you experienced that at the War Room.
Yeah, but
I guess a brief moment.
I saw a guy I hadn't seen for a couple years here at the War Room last night. I'm like, bro, you're like twice the man that you were before. That's what men.
Women can't do stuff like that.
Hey, you're getting fat.
What has happened, man? You
There's like 2 of you now. Yeah.
What's the line, bro? I've got 5 5 fat friends, and you're 4 of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, men can do that, and women will cry. And I grew up with just boys in the house. I had 2 brothers, and so this is taking. I don't want to say I've learned it. I'm still learning how to talk to women with my wife, with my daughter.
Yeah,
it is different. They're different. They're going to cry more if you say something that's just direct or harsh. Or,
how old's your daughter?
She's only 8 months, so
Just wait.
Yeah, I know.
What was that meme you put out?
I made a meme with a guy standing under a waterfall, and it said me on the guy, and then the waterfall was just tears. And I said, "This is what it's like having daughters." I've got 4 daughters. It's just constant tears.
Yeah, if it's not this one, it's this one, and then when this one happens, they all happen.
It's a domino effect,
Yeah.
and they're all crying.
Yeah. Well, I do want to encourage people to read that book. I want to encourage you to write a book. I think this is a topic that we need. So we have Doug Wilson's The Serrated Edge. That has been helpful for us to kind of reckon. We've used that book just to recognize, it's okay to be a little sharp. It's okay to, do some of these things. So I would encourage you to look at that. But
I will, yeah.
I think a fuller treatment of this would be really good. You identified 7. Let's go through them. So don't take questions from the enemy at face value. Choose the right setting. This is what Jesus was doing. Use coded language at times. And this one, I don't think I got right. I said shift.
I just said shift the conversation.
Yeah, shift conversations.
But I did, some of the applications from Jesus where he was reminding people of what they knew. So the Pharisees had seen him heal a guy, and he's saying, don't focus on my words, focus on what you just saw.
Yeah.
So he didn't have to add any information. But I guess, and I could have developed it more, when you're shifting a conversation, I think it's easy to shift to things that are like Jesus got to the root issue. So like the things that you're dancing around that you both know the actual conversation should be about. That's really what I'm talking about.
The snake on the table.
The snake on the table.
The snake on the table. Yeah,
right.
Very good. 5, claim the moral high ground. I think that's helpful. I was thinking so a brother, he texted me. He's like, "Hey, asking this question." I'm like, "You asking the question?" But he was thinking about immigration and the border crisis and nations that are coming here and they're hurting, and that we as Christians should be bringing people into our country to care for them and stuff like that. And so they have in their minds a moral high ground because they're compassionate. That's what he was asking, that question.
Or do they, or should they have, go to Mexico or wherever it's happening and set up shop and help them?
Well, and then what we're characterized when we say that is we're cold and unfeeling. And if we were Christians, if we were a Christian nation, wouldn't we be taking in the hurting and taking in?
We literally, you can't see him on the camera, but we have someone sitting in here in the audience who's a missionary to Mexico right now.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's part of, what you do. It's, if you care about those people, then you're going to go to them if you feel compelled by the Lord to go to them. And it doesn't mean that if the government has a policy, maybe you don't agree with it, but they're here, you don't. That's a good Samaritan, right? That's your neighborhood, essentially. That's what Charles Spurgeon said. He felt like it was his neighborhood, so he helped the guy, even though there was a barrier there.
Yeah,
that's what we should do in our neighborhoods. But but this is being argued in a different realm. This is in the realm of public policy, not personal jurisdiction. And they're using these personal jurisdiction principles to try to support something that erodes our national character, which is not very loving to our kids.
No, it's not loving to our families or communities or anything.
Well, and what people don't want to do, people don't want to bring in immigrants into their home.
No,
they want other people to be forced, other people's tax dollars, other people's the economy to be destroyed to be compassionate. Yeah. When none of them would actually take people into their home
themselves. Yeah.
Zero chance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if the moral high ground position on that is that, well, we have to take care of our own. This gets into the orders of love. We have to take care of our own. We're responsible for that. You're worse than an unbeliever if you're not doing that. And so let's use that principle for our nation.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of Christian men fail their families because of this, even, and otherwise godly lives, but they will focus too much on ministry with other people, right? Or a good example that just came to my mind is Francis Schaeffer, who, there's a lot of good things about Francis Schaeffer, but you look at his son, and I don't know if you've read much of Frankie Schaeffer's experiences and stuff growing up in L'Abri, but L'Abri was this place where people were coming, pagans, all the time to essentially live with the Schaeffers, which that's such a nice thing. He just opened his door. Well, that's also where his son experienced a sexual relationship, I think as a teenager for the first time with one of these people who came in. That's also where he was exposed to all kinds of terrible ideas. And so, there was all these threats that come with that. And so you got to make sure that your kids and the people you're responsible for are taken care of first.
Let me crack something open real quick and then we'll leave it. But this happens with foster care and adoption.
Oh, yeah.
And so I would caution anybody who's getting into foster care or adoption to really go wisely with that and think ahead. So we we were in the foster care system. We'd had 2 boys. We were thinking that we would want to have boys. And so we told the state of Kentucky that, we're okay with having boys come in the house because we're a boy home. Well, the first placement was a girl who was 5 years old. And I mean, our hearts melted. I mean, it's just a tragic situation. And so compassion, we brought her in our home. But unknowingly, we brought a lot of chaos and a lot of problem that I think did affect our children. And it was just, we have to think through those kind of things. We have to be wise about that. Going back, I wouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
Now I wouldn't have done it. So anyways, let's move on and then we'll be done. Number 6 was challenge unqualified authority. Jesus, calls them into question their authority. Doesn't just accept their credentials, but it challenges their substance.
I didn't say this morning because I wanted you to be able to get through, but I think we do this a lot with the kind of evangelical elite. You were talking about maybe the political elite, but we do this with the evangelical elite, whether it's Russell Moore, David French, or even Paul Washer or John Piper, even guys we like. It's like if they say something, it's like, oh,
well, even
it's
me,
gospel
I'm
to
not
so many
like
people.
I'm not like a big elite, but there's people who will do. I'm very careful of that. It's like,
Sure.
Don't take my word for it. Look in the scripture. I'm just a guy.
Yep.
So it's dangerous. People can do that to anyone, even your elders. I mean, people in the church could do that.
100%.
Jerry said it, so
It's got to be true.
It is, but all right. Number 7 was the exposed logical absurdity, which he does a lot. Anyways, this was very helpful.
It was good.
I want to encourage people to get the book, and I want to encourage people to be masculine, talk like Jesus, and just let anybody else just. They're good. There's always going to be naysayers. There's always going to be people that are backdoor blackballing you and stuff like that because of the way you're communicating, the way they perceive you, and it's just the way it is.
Yeah. I should probably say too, because I don't always say it's called Against the Waves, Christian Order in a Liberal Age, and JohnHarrisPodcast.com or Amazon. You can get it.
Yep, I'll put a link.
How do I get a signed copy?
JohnHarrisPodcast.com.
And you got to pay the extra $25.
Well, I will send it to you. I mean, make an exception.
That's what I was asking. That's what I was.
I'll print off a copy for my.
Bro, print off a PDF for me.
Yeah, I'll get you a PDF.
He could hook you up.
I'm giving the PDFs away for free. I'm just kidding.
What?
Hey, did you ever work out the Audible thing?
Oh yeah. It's uploaded, and they take about 10 days to process.
So you literally recorded your voice reading this.
Oh yeah. I killed myself.
It's not like an AI voice or anything.
No.
It's
real.
Authentic.
Awesome.
Yeah. Is there any guitar strumming in the background?
No. It is. I think it was like between trips. Like I was like, this week we're recording, and it was a lot. But
wow.
But yeah, it's going to be probably by the time people watch this. I don't know when you're releasing. But
Tuesday. So
it might be out. If not, by the end of the week, it probably should be on Audible. But it's already on Kindle and paperback.
Awesome. That's great. All right. If you've got a question for us, you can write to us at snakeonthetable.com. There's a form, go all the way to the bottom, and it's anonymous. We don't have to know who you are or anything like that.
Yep.
But John won't be here to answer your questions, so you're going to want to go to his podcast.
For those.
Do you have a podcast, right? You have a few followers. We
a little bit.
This is like David and Saul here.
Who am I?
John has his hundreds of thousands, and we have our.
Oh, okay.
Our
You're Saul. I see. JohnHarrisPodcast.com. But Conversations That Matter is the name of it, which my wife.
Dude,
hates,
we're gonna get the bump. You're not gonna get the bump. We'll get a bump.
Yeah, I'll share it.
He might get bumped, but it might be the wrong way.
People are gonna.
When I first said Conversations That Matter was going to be the name, my wife was like, "Well, that's terrible because you're saying like other conversations that people have don't matter."
Oh,
and
wow.
I said that's exactly what I'm saying.
Yes.
You just wish you had thought of Snake on the Table.
I do.
It's the same. It's the same concept. It's a conversation that we need to have.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's more figurative.
All right. Thanks for tuning in.
Lord bless.